He served as the president of the Law Society of Singapore between 1998 and 1999. He was appointed senior counsel in 2010. He was the first chairman of the Asian Mediation Association in 2009, and he's currently chairman of the Singapore International Mediation Centre, or SIMC. He was Singapore's mediation consultant to the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, or UNCITRAL, which paved the way for the creation of the Singapore Convention on Mediation in 2019. George Lim, welcome to Inconvenient Questions.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. So my first question is this, George. Now, mediation is often seen, and has always been seen actually, as, and especially by lawyers and possibly even judges, as the poorer cousin of litigation and arbitration in particular, as dispute resolution platforms, Yet you chose to go into a full-time mediation practice, leaving litigation and arbitration, which you excelled in, I don't think there's any other lawyer in Singapore, not to mention senior lawyer, who's actually gone into mediation as a full-time practice. Now, why do you do this?
Okay, so for me, I'm a little bit old-fashioned. When I got called to the bar in 1982, for me it was a privilege just to be a lawyer. And I've always had this sense in me that law should be used to help people, to service people. So I've seen it as a calling in a sense. So, I have many years practicing in the courts. I got into mediation 23 years ago. And when you mediate a case and you can get parties to come to a resolution themselves and shake hands at the end, it is so satisfying. So for me, I decided, this is the way for me, because I've been doing this for on a full-time basis for the last 5 years. I mediate 1 or 2 cases a week. My wife says this is the best decision I made for myself in many years. Yeah.
And
so,
are you able to pay your bills?
Oh yeah. I mean,
so it's possible. It's possible to actually earn a living out of doing mediation fully.
Yes, I would think so. I mean, I'll probably make more money doing litigation, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's enough money, and for me, money is not the main thing.
But my point is, I mean, to a message to perhaps younger lawyers, it doesn't mean that you've got to, live from hand to mouth if you go into mediation. It does pay you reasonably well, right?
I think there's enough. But as I said, it's the money is not the thing, but really to try and help people resolve their own problems. And for me, this is culture. How do you get people to try and take ownership of their problems and manage their own disputes? The world needs more peace.
Right. So could you, in a nutshell, George, tell us how mediation came about in Singapore and a little bit of the history.
Okay. Mediation is actually very Asian and very Singaporean. The old days, the Chinese used to have their disputes resolved by the clans, right? The clan leaders. The Indians had their panchayat system.
Panchayat system, yeah.
The Malays had the penghulus in the kampongs. And then, of course, our history. The British came. They brought along with them the common law system, the court system. And then the main form of resolving disputes was the court. Okay, and that for many years that was with us. In the 1990s, the courts had a backlog. And in mid-1990s, I think a decision was made to introduce mediation to help clear the backlog. I don't think
it was Chief Justice Yong Pang Hao then.
Yes, around that time, yes. And to be fair, I don't think it's just about clearing the backlog, but also, to help people manage their disputes. But that was the introduction of mediation in Singapore. I mean, it already took off in the States, in Australia, like 10 years before that. But for us, in the mid-1990s. And then in 1997, the Singapore Mediation Centre was set up. Pursuant to a call by the then Attorney General Chan Sek Keong. And so Singapore Mediation Centre started doing commercial cases. And then after that, the Community Mediation Centre, set up by the Ministry of Law, started handling community disputes, problems between neighbours. So that was the early stage when mediation took off in Singapore. That was the foundation.
So fast forward, Singapore International Mediation Centre. When was it set up, and what was the motivation?
Okay, so in 2013, our Honourable Chief Justice, Sundaresh Menon, and the Ministry of Law set up a working group, and I co-chaired that working group with Edwin Glasgow QC, and to make recommendations on turning Singapore into an international mediation centre. Because arbitration had already taken off, the courts were well known for their reputation, their credibility, and I think the thinking then was that mediation was needed because there was also the growing trend in the world. So the working group then recommended that an international mediation center be set up and to cater to cross-border disputes. I think at that time, Asia had the highest foreign direct investment flows.
That's right.
At that time. I think the number was like 39% of global inflows.
Yes,
okay.
and a lot of it was also intra-Asia as well.
Right, and so with more trade, there'll be more disputes, and you want to handle those disputes expeditiously and as effectively, efficiently as possible.
And also, so I think, am I correct to say that in mediation, if you use mediation, business relationships have a chance to continue? Yes. Has that been your experience?
Yes. Okay. So mediation, when you go to court, usually there's a winner, there's a loser.
It's binary.
And parties will hate each other really after all that, going through all that adversarial process. But mediation is not adversarial because you try and get parties to resolve the problem themselves, and they come to a settlement agreement which is mutually beneficial. They don't get everything, but everybody gets something, and that's why we say it's win-win.
At this point, it'll be probably very timely for us, for you. I just want our audience to have a better understanding of mediation.
Right.
You've been mediating what? You've mediated over 500 cases?
Yes.
Disputes,
yes.
Yeah. Now,
yes.
If you can share with us, without mentioning names, of course, an example of a cross-border mediation that you were involved in that's fascinating, where the parties actually came in angry with each other and possibly left, shaking hands or even hugging and kissing, perhaps.
Okay, actually that happened in a case. It was a construction matter, Singapore party and a foreign company, foreign party. And in the morning, they were trading barbs, okay? I can tell you, there were 4-letter words exchanged. We try to handle that, but sometimes it's good to let people vent because there was a lot at stake. But after that, when people started talking and looking at, what's commercial, what's using common sense, they came to an agreement. And at the end of it, they actually hugged, okay? I'm telling you the truth, okay? Because my CEO, Chuan Wee-Ming, was with me. These two parties hugged, and they asked us to take a photograph of them. I have that photograph in my phone, but I won't really show you, of course.
Yeah.
It's confidential.
But just out of curiosity, what was the nature of the dispute, and what was the volume? What was the amount?
Okay, it was a construction matter, and the claim was well above 5 million.
Okay, and in one day you settled it?
In one day, yes.
In one day. And is that typical? Being able to settle disputes of this scale in
most of our cases are resolved within a day. Okay.
And
if you have time, I'll tell you about another case.
Yeah, why don't you? Very quickly.
Okay, so this is a case I mediated in Seoul, in South Korea. Joint venture between an American company and a Korean company.
Was this under the Singapore International Mediation Centre?
Yes,
okay.
It was.
All right.
Okay. Joint venture was actually in another Asian country. Okay. For many years, they went on. There were problems. They were accusing each other of things, and they were headed for court. But they decided to come for mediation. They didn't want
countries? What countries?
American, Korea.
Okay.
South Korean. They didn't want a Korean mediator or an American mediator. Okay, because in mediation, you try to look for mediators who are neutral and impartial. So they picked someone in from Singapore, and I flew up to Seoul. And I was thinking of some way to break the tension, because I knew from the correspondence that it was very tense. So you know what I did? I purchased a teapot.
Oh God, okay.
From a Korean supermarket. I brought Singapore TWG, and I started the mediation, okay, by serving them tea. Okay, I think it helped break the ice. Okay, they didn't expect, coming to a mediation for the mediator, from Singapore to be going around pouring tea, and we started the mediation that way, and we settled that night at midnight. But I asked them after that, and they told me it really helped them. Okay, so in the end, the settlement was the American party bought the shares of the Korean party. We didn't have to talk about all the problems and all the allegations, because in the end we said, look, let's be commercial about this. We can't get on. Let's try and part in the best possible way. And they did that. And what was really great was the Korean party wanted, and the Korean party was actually represented by a lady. Okay, she was from Busan.
Mm-hmm.
Stocky lady. In the end, she wanted to keep some of the clients, and we agreed. We carved out. We want to make sure the staff, all the staff, or the main staff members, kept their jobs, and they agreed on that. So to me, it was a really good, because there was transition, and people were happy about it, and they paid her in installments, so to make sure that everything went along smoothly. So it was very tiring, but I tell you, everybody was so happy.
And it's very rewarding to be involved in something like this, right?
Exactly.
And would you say that in a lot of these cases, they don't default on the agreement or the settlement?
So if you're a good mediator, and if parties understand their obligations, we make sure that there will be no problems going forward.
That's been one of the major issues surrounding mediation, right? That it's not enforceable, as is in the case of litigation or arbitration. Now, how have we been able to get around that? I mean, one for Singapore is the Mediation Act, right? That has helped a lot. But could you very quickly explain to our viewers what exactly surrounds this issue?
Okay, so as we said just now, in most cases, if you manage the mediation well, enforceability is not a problem. Okay, make sure people understand. But in a fraction of cases, sometimes problems creep up later. For example, a guy agrees to pay by installments, and he genuinely wants to do it, but 3 months down the road, he's got another problem and he can't pay. And what do you do? So enforceability becomes very important then. Okay, so in Singapore, what they did was we now have a Mediation Act. I think that was in 2017.
17, yeah.
Where even before not having to go to court, not having to go through a court proceedings, if you have a mediated settlement done under a proper institution, you can take that agreement and you can register it as a court order, so that if there's a problem, you can enforce it just like a court order, just like having gone through a whole court case and the judge makes an order. So we've solved that problem internally, but internationally we've had that problem. There is no mechanism to allow for the enforcement of mediated settlement agreements.
So that's where the International Convention on Mediation comes in. But let's hold that thought for a minute.
Okay.
Could you share with us what have been some of the achievements of the Singapore International Mediation Centre? I mean, it's been 4 years since the SIMC was set up. Are you satisfied with the journey so far? Are we anywhere close to standing shoulder to shoulder with the best institutions in mediation globally?
Okay, I think we've done very well. Of course, there's a lot more that we can do, but I think we've earned the respect of many people, many mediators, many people in the world today. You're right, we are a young baby. Okay, we're actually 5 years old. And we started off, and as I told you, we're not for profit. Focus is on cross-border disputes, and for us, beginning that journey was really difficult at the start, because people don't know us. You've got to go to different markets. You've got to go to different countries. Yeah. And one of the problems is that mediation is not as well known as litigation or arbitration. So you've got to start explaining mediation, the benefits. And a lot of people they said, no, I don't know what that is about. I go to a lawyer, we just go to court.
Yeah.
Go for arbitration.
So let me ask you some very specific questions. Huh?
Sure.
Today, how many countries does SIMC actually have a foothold in of some sort?
Okay,
What
so
are the countries?
when we started off, we wanted to focus on Asia, in Asia, and on several countries, and we picked China, India, South Korea, and Japan. Okay, these were the countries where our sister company SIAC, the Arbitration Centre, we are sister companies actually. We work together with them. These were the countries where SIAC is well known. And so with the help of SIAC, we moved into the markets. We actually started contacting lawyers, mediators, business people directly, started to explain what mediation was. And so this has been the focus, the 4 countries. Of course, we do work in other countries as well, but these are the target countries.
Right. And I gather that we have a fairly strong standing and reputation also in Europe.
Yes, and a lot due to the convention, because
Yes.
Because with the Singapore Convention, that convention has put Singapore on the map globally. Yeah. Singapore is now, yes.
In terms of SIMC, how many cases have you managed so far, SIMC alone, cumulative, in the last 4 or 5 years?
Okay, so let me be frank about this. When you're a young startup, it's not so easy to get cases. I mean, we started off with like 3 cases, 5 cases a year at the beginning. Okay,
but
today after 5
momentum.
years, we've picked up. We are now 127 cases.
Wow.
This year, as at September, we are 37 cases. I think we'll hit 40 or 50 by the end of this year. And if you ask other institutions in the world, other mediation institutions, they'll tell you that's very good.
And what's just out of curiosity, what's the total dollar value of the mediation cases that you have handled, SIMC?
Okay, so I think it is close to $4 billion.
$4 billion cumulatively.
$4 billion, yes. So right now, for example, we are doing a case, 6 parties all around the world. Nothing to do with Singapore. We help them select a mediator. We've got a panel from all over the world. It's been going on for 5 days online. And I'm told that, prospectively, they're doing well.
And,
so
the amount in dispute is?
Oh, hundreds of millions.
Yeah, so it's amazing that we are actually handling such huge and fairly complex cases. Very quickly, what is the reason why Singapore is being selected to mediate such complex cases? Is it because we are seen as neutral, as being above board?
Okay, so I think it's the Singapore brand. We are trusted in the world in terms of efficiency, in terms of our the legal profession, the backing from the courts. The judiciary is held in high regard, and people know that if they come here, we do our very best to make things work. So I think people trust, and that's very important in mediation. Trust.
And you have a panel of mediators, expert mediators from all over how many countries and how many of these mediators you have? They're top notch,
okay.
Right?
Right. So when we started off, we decided we'll pick the best or near the best from all over the world. So we've got 70 mediators, top-notch mediators from 14 jurisdictions. Singapore mediators, about 10 or 12. The rest are from all over the world. And
right.
For us, this was our statement to the world that we are doing this as a service. We pick the best. And in mediation, you can select your own mediator. We will help you select from amongst these people. But I'm really proud of our panel. Okay, so for example, you might have heard of this person called William Ury.
Yes.
William Ury is the co-editor of the book Getting to Yes
by Roger Fisher.
Correct. Okay, and
he's a bestseller.
Yeah, and he's held in so much esteem.
He's on your panel.
He's on our panel. Yeah. Tommy
So,
Koh is on our panel. And Tommy is well known all over the world. And so these are the type of people that we want on our panel.
Right. Now, we are overrunning, but I'm going to give you a minute and a half to quickly now talk about the Singapore Convention on Mediation. You were involved in it very quickly, what's your involvement? What is the impact that this has on the world of mediation? And any final thoughts? You have 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah, so in 2014, UNCITRAL, which you talked about, which promotes global trade, decided to set up a working group to explore the possibility of having a convention, an international convention to enforce mediated settlements.
This was held in New York.
So this was held at the UN in New York and Vienna over 4 years. We had a series of meetings.
And you were involved? And you were involved right through?
50 countries in that working group. I was part of the Singapore delegation. The 50 countries elected Singapore to chair that session,
wow,
which was an honor. And we were very fortunate to have this lady called Natalie Morris Sharma, who was from Ministry of Law, but now with the Attorney General's Chambers. And she chaired it very well, okay? And I had another delegate, Sharon Ong from Ministry of Law, the three of us from the Singapore team. And you know, it was very difficult, the deliberations, because you got people from different countries, different interests, common law system, civil law system. But we cobbled together this convention, and the convention is an international treaty or agreement. And that was eventually signed on the 7th of August last year.
2019.
46 countries signed it, okay? Record, it was a record by UN standards.
Right. Even the New York Convention on Arbitration didn't have so many signatories when it was convened at first.
Okay, if I'm not wrong, I think it was about 10. They started with 10.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? What does this mean? I mean, does it have to be ratified by these countries before they can be enforced in the respective jurisdictions?
Okay, so under that convention, you need 3 countries to ratify it before it can come to effect. And we've got 6 now. 6 countries have ratified it.
So the convention has been ratified.
So the convention has come to force. It came to force last month on the 12th of September.
But in each of these jurisdictions, the respective governments have to ratify it before you can enforce it in that jurisdiction. Am I correct?
Yes. So signing is a signal that you support it, but then people are given time to make sure they have domestic legislation to support the enforcement of that convention. And that's why people take time, countries take time. And now we've got 6 countries who've ratified, and we hope that more and more will come on board. We've got US, China, India who signed it, okay? And that's really fantastic. That's more than half the world's population. So that demonstrates the interest and the need for mediation on the ground. And I can tell you the impact has been fantastic, okay? Countries where we're struggling with mediation now because of the convention, you know, I think they've now come on board. You may know that in India, for example, for many years they were trying to get mediation into the main system. India signed the convention, and after that, because I've been going on trips to India, the Chief Justice of India is now fully in support. I was at a conference in February this year where he spoke in support. They're talking about pre-court mediation, okay, and now they are working on a Mediation Act. So it's trickled down to the ground. You know, this, for me, mediation is like a form of access to justice. People who cannot afford long drawn out battles in court, mediation is a way. It's a way to try and resolve your problems quickly. And in India, you know, it takes years. But for me, it has transformed societies, and not just India, but many other countries. So those 4 countries I talked to you about, when we first started, people didn't know what mediation was about. We had to do cold calls. Today, when we go there, people welcome us, okay, because they now understand what mediation is about. And we've been doing training with key senior people in those countries, and they appreciate it. And I think it will transform society. So
ultimately, you're seeing it not just as a legal means. It's not. It's beyond that. It's actually a fundamental attitudinal shift away from adversity to finding common ground. Am I correct? Exactly. Isn't that what it is? And this is precisely what the world needs, especially post-COVID.
Yeah. So George Lim, this is about growing a new culture, Vishwa.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us on Inconvenient Questions. He's wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much.